So with the Zercher Squat, what we're looking to do is mainly three things. We want to maintain core rigidity through the way we breathe. We want to aim our rib cage to be parallel, so rib cage parallel to the pelvis. And we want to be able to bend our knees so we can scoop the hips out of anterior tilt and into a more posterior tilt position. So before you add load, what I'd recommend first is get the right setup, and then you get the feel for the exercise, and then you can add maybe a bar or a kettlebell or a dumbbell depending on what implement you have.
So the first thing you'll notice in this video is the fact that I'm wearing Olympic lifting shoes. You can use your own footwear attire, it doesn't really matter. I just find this movement is much more comfortable the higher my heel raise is. So the main thing is you have some form of heel elevation, whether that's from Olympic shoes or from plates or from a wedge. It's completely dependent on what you have available. Now the next thing we want to focus on here is having soft knees. That's very, very important. So knees are going forward but also slightly rotated in. Now usually we'll hear rotate and push your knees out. For this exercise I want them slightly turned in, just a tiny amount. Then what we're going to do is reinforce that scooped hip position. So we're going to tuck our hips the opposite way into posterior tilt, as you can see here. Then we're going to put our elbows forward, crunch down and aim that rib cage over the hip. So now we have that parallel line between the top of the hip and the bottom of the rib cage. Once in this position, we're going to reinforce really keeping this rigid spine by inhaling in through our nose, exhaling through our mouth. Now as we're exhaling, we want to squeeze all the muscles around the midsection so they're gripping onto the spine, and then breathing in through the nose. What we should find is we get a little bit of expansion in the lower back, so we feel this area inflating here, also in the glutes, and the knees can move freely inwards and out as we breathe. So as we're breathing in, knees going out, and as we breathe out, knees going in gently.
So as you'll be able to see in that video, before you add any load, the main thing is that we can get the knees forward, hips underneath, so we've tucked, and we can get that clamp down, so a little crunch position to engage the abs, and then we want to breathe in through our nose to get that full 3D expansion everywhere, so in the midsection, in the back, in the chest and the upper back as well. We want to get used to that feeling, and then we can add load. Now if you are going to be adding load with a barbell, how you unrack the bar is very important, so here's some things to consider.
Unracking the Zercher Squat is something you need to be quite careful with, as because you're not loading the bar on a bony structure such as your spine, the weight can feel extremely heavy if you're not prepped right. What I like to do is ensure that I've got myself underneath the bar as much as possible and have taken a deep breath in before taking the weight off. So what I'm going to do here is drop myself underneath the bar. I have my hands clamped in a position like so. I'm going to get my chest as close to the bar as possible, breathe in, then lift off with my hips directly under the bar. I don't want to rack it with my hips back. I want to make sure my hips are directly underneath. I breathe in and I step backwards out of a little squat position like so. So it's a slight lunge, step back, find the heel raise into the position you want, and then you're good to go.
Now I appreciate not everybody will have an axle bar at home, but if you do have a barbell, a thin barbell or a standard barbell, I would recommend getting one of these, which is one of the pads to put under your elbow there in the elbow crease. Just because as you add load to it, if you do have a thin bar in the elbow crease, it does get quite painful or uncomfortable. If the discomfort is then going to impact your choice to put more weight on, then the exercise isn't really as optimal as it can be. So after doing that, we can put it all together and see what it looks like with everything in place using the Zercher position with a bar.
Now we're in position, we want to perform the movement to the highest intensity possible. Now this isn't always about the weight on the bar, it's about your ability to maintain a certain position. So if we think about that position that we talked about in the previous video, we have a posterior tilt of the hips, knees forward and abs crunched into that position. When we breathe in, we can breathe air into the lower back, and we can make sure that the knees have space to move, so we're not just going to drive them out. Now what I want to focus on here is my knees going forward as far away from the for the midline as possible. So if we have a line of force which is going out through the heel here, we want to get the knees to go forward and away from that line. So I'm going to breathe into the position to here, and I get as low as I possibly can whilst I feel like I've got pelvic control. So I have complete inter-abdominal pressure and solid in this position. I'm going to pause at the bottom and then breathe out on the way up. So again, I'm breathing in on the way down, allowing my knees to go forward, pausing, keeping that pressure and driving out the bottom position. One more time, breathing in through the nose, knees forward, pause in that position there. Now, commonly, if you lose pressure in a squat, your hips will fly back and then you have to kink back up forward. This movement, you should only use a weight and do a certain amount of reps where your descension, so the way down, looks identical to the way up. So you should be coming up in the exact same position with no deviation in body position.